Are Bitcoin and larger cryptocurrency markets on the verge of the next super mega bull run? Yeah, I know. Things seem a bit sluggish right now, but as they say, the night is darkest before the dawn. Die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Wait a second, I don't think that Batman quote works. Anyway, right now, some of the biggest macroeconomic factors, they're all shifting, okay? All of which indicates that the end game is upon us. Disgusting. Ew amounts of money are about to be printed and liquidity injections beyond your wildest imagination, folks. Such big liquidity injections, the biggest. I only talk about the biggest liquidity injections, okay? They're coming, all right? And look, this is something to pay attention to. So we spent a lot of time discussing what the technical and the fundamental indicators are all telling us about, well, the price for magic internet money. And that's very important, obviously. However, it's also good to zoom out, examine the macroeconomic forest. And by that, of course, I'm talking about global money supply, or the global M2. So in today's video, let's discuss the global M2, what the historical relationship is between global M2 and the price of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency more broadly, where global M2 is likely headed in the not so distant future, and what that means for your bags and the end game of this bull market. Let's get it. So global M2 is the measure of the world's total money supply. Maybe you're familiar with the US M2, which is the total money supply within the United States. The US M2 basically takes into account all the liquid cash within the country, everything that's in circulation, down to the penny. Well, they probably round up by like a billion, but anyway, in the checking accounts, in the savings accounts, money market accounts, that kind of stuff. Well, the global M2 is the same, but it accounts for all the cash across all the world's fiat currencies. Now, the global M2 is always changing because central banks are continually, manipulating things. They're expanding, they're contracting their money supplies on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, which is a process known as quantitative easing or quantitative tightening, depending on if they're flooding or pulling money out of the system. And central banks are always out there mucking around with their interest rates, which also affects the M2 supply, just in a more indirect way. So as investors, paying attention to M2 is important because when there's more cash in the system, assets like real estate, commodities, stocks, crypto will be priced higher due to the higher supply of available cash out there that are chasing those assets. Likewise, less cash in the system means lower asset prices due to the cash supply squeezing. Now, pinning down the precise global M2 obviously is very difficult because not every central bank and not every country is super transparent about their numbers. But estimates are that there are around $100 trillion in cash out there floating around, expressed as a US dollar sum, and that's currently circulating around the globe. And you can see from this chart that global M2 hit an all-time high in 2022 as the COVID stimulus relief was ending, dipped slightly in 2023, and now is back to its previous all-time highs. So, okay, that's the global M2. Next question. How has global liquidity historically affected cryptocurrency prices? Well, it's undisputed that a rising or falling M2 causes traditional assets to rise or fall. What's less immediately certain, of course, is how M2 affects crypto markets. We know markets in crypto generally follow along stocks, but it's a bit less clear because crypto is still such a new asset class. We don't have as much data to work with, but intuitively we would expect that crypto would react about the same as traditional asset classes, maybe as a proxy for tech stocks, for example. And from the historical data that we do have, our intuition, of course, is correct. Here's Bitcoin's price plotted as a black line compared to the global M2, both in terms of the total supply, which is a blue line, as well as the M2's year-over-year percent changes, which is shown in green and orange. So just take a moment, have a look, study the chart, and you tell me, what do you notice? Well, it's clear that Bitcoin's price rises and falls right along with global M2. But what's striking here is just how strongly Bitcoin's price reacts to larger M2 changes on a percentage basis. Here's the same data, just put in a cleaner format. Notice that in 2014 and 2015, when global M2 dropped from 6% year-over-year increases to minus Bitcoin's price fell by 50%. In 2017 and in 2018, as M2's percentage increases shot from 3% to 14%, Bitcoin went from $2,700 to $20,000 in 2019. M2's percentage change dipped back into negative territory, coinciding, of course, with Bitcoin bottoming out at around $3,000. Then in 2020 and 2021, as M2 ripped to 20% year-over-year increases, Bitcoin responded with a surge up to a $69,000 all-time high. At the time, no, we have a higher high now. But anyway, finally, when M2's percentage change went negative again in late 2022, Bitcoin bottomed, well, under 20K. So the data makes clear that Bitcoin's price is positively correlated with changes in the global M2 supply. So we should be paying attention, and that the more aggressive the percentage change, the more that we can expect the price of Bitcoin to move. Okay. And as a consequence, the prices of other crypto assets, because everything else is really just a beta play for Bitcoin. Now, just to make it clear, I don't think global M2 is necessarily the only factor that impacts Bitcoin and crypto, not even necessarily the primary factor. But I do consider it as a very important factor, so I'm going to pay attention to, along with, of course, Bitcoin's halving cycles, general market sentiment, new on-ramps like ETFs, prevailing crypto narratives, broader adoption metrics, all that kind of stuff, all massively relevant for our market specifically. Now, before we get to where global M2 might be headed next, I want to interrupt the flow real quick to let you know about something very important, and that is the best damned newsletter in the cryptocurrency business. It's my newsletter. It's called Wealth Mastery, and you're going to love it. Our 135,000 plus weekly readers do. You should check it out. You'll be getting the latest, the best insights on meme coins, altcoins, airdrops, deep dives, NFTs, technical analysis, and much, much, much more. Check it out. Link in the description on YouTube or the pinned comment over on X. Thank you very much. So let's get back to it. Now that we understand the relationship between global M2 and crypto, the next question is, where to next, internet man? Does global M2 go up from here? Well, the evidence, as I see it, indicates that M2 is getting ready for a massive next leg up. Why? Well, first is our current positioning within the Global Liquidity Index's long-term cycle. Very important, don't fade this. The Global Liquidity Index captures the availability of liquid cash within the global economy. The index tracks changes in global M2, but also interest rates and other credit conditions. Now, economists, they have observed for quite a while now that global liquidity, as tracked by the index, tends to run in 5 to 6 year cycles. We last bottomed in this cycle in mid-2023, and now we are starting to head back up. Now, if this pattern continues, we should have another peak by late 2025. Bitcoin 4-year cycle, anybody? And of course, all of this implies that global M2 should be well headed up by then. Okay. Second, it's thought that more central bank interest rate cuts are coming, which impacts all of this. Currently, the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate is 5.25 to 5.5%. And most analysts think that we are absolutely due for at least one U.S. interest rate cut this year, with more coming in 2025. However, the U.S. Federal Reserve is lagging behind other central banks right now from several other major developed economies, such as Switzerland, Sweden, Canada, the European Central Bank for the whole damn Eurozone. They've already started their rate cuts. Third, going back to the world's largest central bank, the U.S. Federal Reserve has been engaging in quantitative tightening since June 2022. However, the Fed did start tapering its tightening in the past month by reducing the amount of cash that it's burning from $60 billion per month to $25 billion per month. We also have the Fed bond buyback program of $2 billion a week. And it's thought that all of this QT will end completely either this year or in 2025. Now, these actions, of course, will reduce downward pressure on global M2. And finally, it appears that China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, well, they will soon begin their own quantitative easing program, as the country's economy, of course, is still battered and reeling from all the craziness, the domestic real estate crisis, the lingering fallout from the country's wild draconian lockdowns, and all the other stuff, trade tariffs from the US, trade tariffs from the EU, et cetera, et cetera. They're printing 160 billion. So there's that. Now, zooming back out, given everything discussed, along with the fact that global M2 is now ranging, kind of sideways with its 2022 all-time high, my sense is that we will see M2 break this range to the upside and hit a new all-time high either this year or next year. And if that happens, as history suggests, we can expect the valuations of Bitcoins and really the broader cryptocurrency market to follow up. None of this, of course, takes into account the other major factors at play, like, Bitcoin's coming supply shock and the large wave of adoption from all the ETFs and all this sort of stuff. Okay. Look, long story short, my opinion, crypto is due for a very fun ride over the next year and a half. And an increasing global M2 supply will be part of the reason for that. Because remember, the money, the liquidity, it is the rising tide that lifts all boats. It lifts stocks, okay? It lifts tech stocks. It lifts everything, crypto included. Thanks for watching.